Hello, everybody. Welcome to another wonderful webinar with the Measure Quick team. Ben Reed, Shelby, who's not with us today. And joining us is David Horton from Scarpello Consulting, Jessica Azzarello from The Attic Queen, and Johnny Lang from Knopf Insulation is trying to join us. He's having some technical difficulties today. So let me share a screen with you folks real quick here. Sorry, we're a little unorganized today, folks. Okay, so today's webinar, as I said, is heat pumps minus the envelope equals a sandwich with no bread. We're going to be diving into the problems with electrification and heat pump installation without considering the building envelope. A lot of what we talk about today is based on a study from the ACEEE that just got released not too long ago, titled Empowering Electrification Through Building Improvements. There was a lot of great information in that study. One of the focuses of the study, of course, is electrification with building envelope improvements. There was a lot of key takeaways in that study. But the first three that we have highlighted here are what we feel were the most important. We also feel like those first three highlighted items are things that us as building envelope and building science professionals have been talking about for a long time now. We feel like they continue to be the most important factors to consider when considering building improvements. And as you can see, items 3, 4, and 5 highlight that when heat pump and electrification improvements are recommended or installed in conjunction with the envelope improvements, it increases the efficiency and the expected outcome of the heat pump itself. And it also helps the heat pump be able to operate the way that it should. Today, we're going to be covering a bunch of different topics between the guests that we have on. One of the big topics is the highlighted question there: is installing a heat pump the single best upgrade for a home? Should it ever be framed that way? Because right now, that's what in the industry and from the buzz that's been created, that's what we're hearing a lot of. It's heat pump, heat pump, heat pump. And people are seeming to throw the baby out with the bathwater and forget about the envelope. And I read an article not too long ago entitled Order of Operations, and it talked about getting back to the basics as far as the order of operations when we're talking about any kind of home improvement. Air sealing and insulation remain the first steps for energy saving improvements, regardless of electrification goals. And home energy retrofits are always a complex interconnected system to improve the functionality of the whole entire home. Recently, I made a post on LinkedIn by a gentleman whose name I'm not going to attempt to pronounce until I've heard it spoken, but you can go find the post. He wrote a very thoughtful analogy about installing heat pumps and how it's akin to an engine swap in a car. And he made the point that engine swap outs in cars are almost always custom jobs tailored to each vehicle specifically. Similarly, upgrading to a heat pump requires a bespoke, and I love the use of his word his use of the word bespoke here. I went ahead and put the definition in parentheses there because I think it's so great that it speaks to what we're, no pun intended, talking about here. It's a product made specially according to the needs of an individual customer. And he said, to recap, he said, similarly, upgrading to a heat pump requires a bespoke approach, considering the unique aspects of each home. And that is a very, very, very important thing to take home, to take to the bank, however you want to say it. I'm saying home so many times here. That we want to focus on the fact that you need to always look at what's going on in the home, how the people are using it, any improvements that's been made, how that heat pump is going to work, if it's going to cover the heating load, what is the heating load of the home. There's all kinds of things that we need to understand when we're installing a heat pump in a home. It can't just be the thing that we've always fought against, which is box swapping. Take a box out, put a box in. Now the box is called a heat pump instead of an air conditioner, or instead of a furnace. It's just a different name for the same box. So we have to be careful to not fall back into bad habits just because we think we have a silver bullet in our hands because of all the media marketing. And then we're going to talk about how it should be a holistic approach should always be used. And you should always take in the health, safety, and comfort prior to even worrying about decarbonization, or at least in conjunction with it. And then, as usual, we'll touch on some HVAC design and equipment selection needs, because in heating-dominated climates, especially, the interplay between the heating and cooling loads is crucial. It's something that you really, really have to pay attention to get a reasonably sized piece of equipment that's going to work to service both loads as equally as possible. And this one last little graph, this came from the study. I thought it was really cool. It really drives home the point of doing electrification or decarbonization, whatever term you want to use for what's going on without the weatherization. It's really just ridiculous when you look at this graph to even talk about it without talking about first the building, or at least in conjunction, the building envelope improvements. So without further ado, I'm going to jump us into the conversation and introduce my guest here. Let me stop this slideshow. Oh, I guess you stopped my share for me. Thank you, moderator. Hey, looks like we got Johnny Lang, maybe. Or the ghost that was. Johnny, are you there? Okay, so audience, meet Dave Horton, meet Jessica, meet the ghost that was Johnny Lang. And we're going to go ahead and get this conversation started here. I'm going to let these guys go around and introduce themselves really briefly and just tell you a bit about themselves, and then we'll get started. Jessica, go ahead. Take it away.
Hi, my name is Jessica Azzarello, but I identify as the Attic Queen. I am based out of Oldsmar, Florida, which is right outside of Tampa, and I own and operate a home performance company specializing in removing insulation, air sealing, and just making attics great again. So that's it.
Thanks, Jessica. I'm Dave Horton. I'm the Director of Energy Engineering for Scarpello Consulting. We are a tax consulting firm. My division specializes in 45L, which a lot of people have heard about recently, 179D, and all other energy-related tax incentives and credits. I would say, personally, you could describe me as a Christian, libertarian, environmentalist, capitalist, lunatic farmer. And we'll talk more about that stuff later.
Awesome. So how we're going to do this is I'm going to start out with some general questions that we came up with from all of us reading the study and also talking about this topic offline. And I'm going to throw them out there. The ghost. That's hilarious. Johnny Lang is the ghost of Christmas future from Scrooge. So dubbed. And we're just gonna start a conversation and we're gonna see where it goes. And I think we're gonna get some good. Hey, oh shit, Johnny, hold on, Johnny. Really quickly introduce yourself there, bud.
Mic check. Can you hear me, Jeremy?
We can.
Good. It's good to hear your voice, and it's good to see all these faces. Once again, in post-pandemic world, I'm having technical issues. So late to the table, but glad to be here. I'm Johnny Lang. I've had the pleasure of working with two of the three people that are on this screen right here. And Jessica, your reputation precedes you. Nice to meet you. But I'm a training manager for Knopf Insulation, and apologize for the delay, everybody. But I'm excited to be here.
I'm excited that you got on. I was really hating not having you. Somebody said, now you are the ghost of Christmas present.
Aha.
So I was just doing a little housekeeping, telling everybody how we're going to handle this today. We have some general questions we're going to start with, and we're going to jump into some more specific questions related to each of your guys' fields and just see where the conversation goes. So Without further ado, and anybody can take these first general ones. You guys just jump in. Just tell me who wants to take them. Like, one of our first questions was, are you seeing a lot of heat pumps being installed in homes without adequate insulation or air sealing? And if so, what problems arise because of this scenario?
I'd like to hear from Jessica on that one.
Yeah.
I'll take it. So I often get the call, hey, I just replaced my AC and I want to add insulation. And I'm like, okay. So I'm happy about it, right? Because insulation and AC go hand in hand. If you don't have the proper amount of insulation, especially in Florida and hot climates, the heat will make it through the few inches and take over the heat space or the conditioned space, right? So that's an issue. But you know, really the proper thing to do is to plug the holes first. You want to reduce the leakage and then properly size it, right? So, you know, at least they're doing something, but, you know, there's a lot that goes into it besides just changing an AC unit and replacing it and then adding insulation. It really, really is a science.
Do you see with those situations, do you see people, once you do the improvements, start having trouble with the way the AC is operating?
Yes.
Or the heat pump?
Yes. A lot of times I'll get a customer reach out to me. They're like, oh, or I'll follow up with them and I'm like, hey, how's it going? They're like, oh, great. The unit's not running at all. Right. So they went from their unit running all day and it not keeping up to now we pulled out all the old stuff. We pulled out all of the trash and then we foamed all of the holes. We tightened it up and then we put all new in. So it's very, very efficient. So unfortunately, now at that point, the AC may be too large, right? So the other thing also is that, especially in Florida, a lot of occupants train themselves that between the hours of like 11 a.m. and 8 p.m., they're like, oh, well, it's 83 degrees inside my house anyway. I'm just going to set the thermostat high. So even after we do the work, they're conditioned to keep it high because they're so shocked by their $5,000, $6,000, $8,000 a month electric bill. So I tell them, I'm like, look, you got to drop it a couple degrees because you want your air conditioning to run, because not only is it going to cool or heat, but it's also going to dehumidify the air. So a lot of it, it's you just got to kind of, you know, tell the homeowner what to expect. But, you know, a lot of times it turns out to where the AC is just, you know, at that point too big.
Yeah, I remember a specific example of that exact thing that you're talking about. A guy back in the ARA fund days, he had somebody else come in and do they were paying like $6,000 a house for energy upgrades back then. Like, you could get a bunch of stuff done. It would, if they spent $6,000, they got $12,000 in upgrades. But what didn't get resized was his air conditioner. And so he had all the work done. Then he called us and he's like, and I think we might even have been at National then, Johnny, but this guy, he called and said, I'm removing I have 5 dehumidifiers in my house. I'm removing 5 to 10 gallons per dehumidifier per day of water. And I just don't understand why my air conditioner is not keeping up. And, or is not doing its job anymore. And he's like, I did all this great stuff to my house and now it's not working right. And, you know, we had to go in there and say, yeah, the unfortunate news is you did all this great stuff except one thing that you should have considered while you were doing it, which was resizing your AC or heat pump to the outcome of the upgrades instead of actually keeping it the same and doing a load calculation in conjunction with that. So that is a great example of what ends up happening if the scenario that you just said takes place, which it happens all the time, because the first guys to get comfort complaints are the HVAC industry. It's not Jessica the attic queen, and it's not Dave Horton the consultant or Johnny Lang the Knopf guy. It's the HVAC guys. Their phones ring every day constantly because people are uncomfortable, have energy problems. Everybody relates all that stuff back to the HVAC industry. So I'm going to take one more of these questions here and throw it out to the group. And maybe we can get Dave and Johnny's opinion on this one here. What's your opinions of rebates or incentive programs that prioritize equipment installation but say nothing about the envelope?
I'm going to go first, Johnny.
Well, you know, I will, Dave. Thank you very much for asking. It's good to see you as well, Dave. It's been a long time, buddy. But it's kind of funny that we're talking about the ghost of Christmas past and present. You know, they're coming up on this time of Christmas because, you know, when we were cutting our teeth in the Northern Kentucky Cincinnati market in 2009 with the ARA funds, you know, it's almost kind of like the ghost of Christmas past is going on again now, but instead of swapping out the machine, you know, the boxes, it's the heat pumps. But the same critical elements are missing in the incentivations to do those things in the proper order. So even now in 2023, we're running into this issue of what Jessica's seeing, where the equipment's not sized because the holistic approach of taking a look at the house and understanding that the shell is a component. It's a three-legged stool, and if you're just missing one of those legs, it falls out. So I like to see the move towards electrification. I think it's going to be good in the future. We're building a platform, but just like any other house or foundation, you have to start with the basics, and that's the shell of the building. And so I wish that they were more incentivized. You know, my most exciting thing that I think that came out of the IRA is that there's a blower door test that is being actually incentivized. And for homeowners that are listening out there, you know, that there's a way to get that done without having to pay that price. But that blower door and the shell of the building is so essential in this balancing act that we have to accomplish. And, you know, I learned that from Dave, so I'll let him expand on what his thoughts are.
Thanks, Johnny. So I'll kind of tie my response to both the last couple questions with my anecdotal experience. And this isn't quite an incentive, but I look at it as an incentive where when I bought this old farmhouse about an hour south of Cincinnati a few years ago, the guy who owned it had a roofing and siding company. So they had just put on brand new roofs and done some other exterior upgrades. And one of his brothers owned an HVAC company. And they put in a brand new 3.5-ton heat pump like that year within a few months of me buying this place. So that was sort of one of those things. He was incentivized to do it because he was selling this place, and that incentivized us to buy the place because it had brand new HVAC, right? However, this old farmhouse has every problem you can imagine. It has a bonus room over the garage. It has multiple different crawl spaces built at multiple different times, multiple different knee wall attics, right? But of course, me being the expert in these sorts of things, I said, hey, this is no problem. I've got it under control. I'll be retrofitting this place in short order. And then life happened. And of course, I did nothing since we moved in other than get a few animals and start a little farm that I knew nothing about. So I'm still sitting here, the plumber with the leaky pipes, the crawl spaces, the leaky ducts, the attic knee wall spaces, all these things, none of it's been upgraded. And then last winter, we went through a spell where it was about 5-6 days, all below 10 degrees. And we couldn't keep this place up literally above 45 degrees with kerosene heaters, electric space heaters spread out, stuff, you know, all over the place. We were all huddled together, and that's the reality. And there are many places just like mine. And you guys know we used to retrofit a bunch of trailers not far from here where it's even worse, right? An old farmhouse is one thing. The old trailers that are spread out all throughout the state of Kentucky that I live in, they're even worse. And this is a reality for people. So just swapping out a heat pump, even when it's more efficient, even when the life of the old equipment, when it has reached its useful life, still without envelope upgrades, there can be major problems. And I'm one of those homeowners that's suffering from them.
Hey, Jeremy, I see there's an interesting little side chat going on from Tim. Could you maybe read that out, and then we could address that?
We can. I think they can put it on the screen for us there. And that is a good comment there. He says HVAC contractors have no control whether homeowners air seal and insulate unless they offer it themselves. That's what makes it so challenging to size the system properly. And I think he's saying that's why we should depend more on multi-stage equipment and dehues, because we don't always have the opportunity to sell it. But to that point, and I'll let you go in a minute here, I just want to say one thing. There was a guy, and I think maybe Johnny, you might have been in this session with me. It's one of the ones that we did through Comfort Institute back in the day, but they had a guy in that used to be from a company called HVAC Sales Solutions. And he was talking about drawing a line in the sand. He's like, it's not ever going to be the easiest thing to do. Like, and you're never going to be able to equally compete against your competitors that just want to sell boxes if that's what you want to do. But you have to draw the line in the sand and say, I'm the HVAC contractor with the blower door in my truck, and I'm the guy that's going to take the time to see whether I have the right solution or if there's a different solution that will then make my solution right. And so that really always stuck with me, him saying that, because it is a choice that these guys have to make, whether they want to do the best thing or the easy thing.
Right. And, you know, there's another piece that I learned from you, Jeremy, in the beginning. You know, I remember that you would always say that a prescription without diagnosis is malpractice. And so to Tim's, I see where Tim's going with that. And so my response to Tim would be, so that's an opportunity. I don't see it as a problem. I see it as an opportunity. You know, there is going to be a transition. Jeremy mentioned earlier how the first people to get the calls are the HVAC companies in the industry. They're the ones that the homeowners trust. They come in their house twice a year. They're usually on a service contract, and that's how most HVAC companies are actually valued, by the number of service contracts that they have in their, you know, evaluation of the value of their business. So I would say, Tim, I do agree that we don't have control, but people like Jessica have proved that, you know, something like removing insulation when it needs to come out before is an important step in that. You have to be able to deliver that information to the homeowner at the kitchen table, so that, number one, you gain their trust. Number two, you're doing right by them. And if you are able to explain that in a really basic way, we want to get this out because we want the rodent urine and the degradation of the insulation that's occurred, or the bath fans aren't vented to, you know, those are all opportunities. And so that would be my comeback to the other side of that. You know, as your clientele base grows as an HVAC, in a perfect world, HVAC contractors and home performance mesh and cross, right? And that's what we need to try and work on. But that's a great point, Tim. I understand where you're coming from.
No, and I just want to add something to that real quick. I'm with Tim on that as well. You can't control those things, and I would say I'm less likely to tell someone, hey, draw a hard line in the sand and don't do an upgrade if someone's not willing to do envelope upgrades. I would say where we're at now, I think it's a good thing if HVAC contractors could at least share information. And, you know, every time if you run into that situation, say you have, you know, no attic insulation, you know it's leaky even without a blower door test, and they're just wanting you to swap a box out, maybe have some sort of brochure that says, hey, this is a really good idea. You know, I'm still going to sell you the box you want. I'm still going to put it in. I'm going to commission it the best way I know how and do the best job I can. But this would make everything perform even better. And I would encourage you to build relationships with people like Jessica and those other experts, where you can say, hey, I don't have to be the expert, but I want to connect you with this expert that knows about building performance testing and air sealing and insulation and those things, and let them go share information with the homeowner. And even work out, you know, I'm a capitalist, so I'm not going to tell you not to sell the box. And I'm going to tell you, hey, work out a referral system with companies like that and say, hey, every time you get, you close a deal off of my referral, you know, give me a kickback. And, you know, if you give me referrals, I'll give you a kickback. That's where there's nothing wrong with that. I think that's a great relationship to have. But even just starting with sharing the information, I think is a good step. And then you don't have to say, I'm not going to put in the box if the homeowner doesn't want to put in the box. Here's
one thing I will throw out there. There's a couple easy things that I think and I agree with you. You can't always say no to a sell, or else you're not going to have a business. I mean, it's simple as that. Like, that's what business is. America's a capitalist state, and you got to be able to make money. But here's a couple easy things, in my opinion, and that I've seen HVAC contractors successfully do that is the middle ground between drawing a line, like you said, like give them an option of, hey, here. So understand the value of a load calculation. Okay. First and foremost, like every HVAC contractor should understand the value of that. And when I mean not understand the value, I don't mean understand sizing properly, even though that's the number one thing we use it for. Understand the sales value of a load calculation. There is a very simple block load calculation that can be done, especially if you understand the insulation, the air sealing, stuff like that, in conjunction with a quick blower door. We all know blower door is probably 10 minutes of your time. Set that thing up, throw it on, get a number, put it in your software, put it back in your truck, and then you're spending, sure, are you spending a little extra time than the guy that comes in and sits down and gets 3 proposals and leaves? Yeah, but most of the time we have found, and this is something Comfort Institute banged on and taught Johnny and I and a lot of other people, like they called it the big show. Like there is a bunch of value to showing people that you take the time to look at their house in a way that nobody else did and not spend a bunch of extra time doing it and just throw a blower door on, do a quick block load calculation, which is not going to take you that long. It's not room for room. You don't need to show them airflow. We have Shelby, who's one of our partners here on these webinars. She has a company called Conduit, and it's in the beta phases. You're going to be able to walk through and get a block load, get a full load calculation, let alone a block load in the time that it takes most guys to set up their sales equipment. So the technology is coming to be able to do this stuff. But the point that I'm making is then you can say, hey, we can put this in for you right now the way your house is. But look, if you did this stuff in the future, this is what we'd be able to put in. And here, I'm going to leave you with this, because if you do decide to do this, you need to know what size to put in, and we want you to call us back. And then that way they have the information in front of them in a very quick time frame, almost as quick as it took you to do the sale anyway. And it's a win-win. You didn't lose the initial sale, and you inform them, as somebody in the comments had said, like, you don't have to say no, but you should always be an informational person. They're a comfort advisor, like a lot of these guys call themselves, because, like, let's be real, like a comfort advisor is not a guy that just only knows how to take out a box and put a box back in. Like, you're not advising anybody on comfort by doing that. You're advising them how to replace their equipment, and then you're a replacement salesman at that point. So that there's 2 different avenues there. Okay, I'm going to
have a question for Jessica real quick on that same topic.
Yep.
What advice do you have for HVAC contractors that run into that struggle, that are saying, hey, these people don't want to air seal and insulate? What could you tell them to maybe push them further in that direction and maybe close somebody who they thought they couldn't close on a situation like that?
You want to hear something crazy? I've literally never had an HVAC contractor call me and say, these people don't want to add insulation or air seal. It's crazy. And when I try to have these conversations with a lot of HVAC professionals, like, they look at me like I am a dumb girl. And I'm like, I'm not. So I try to, in the future, I am looking towards getting my own HVAC license, because I really genuinely care for the homeowner and about doing the right thing. And it really is a science. But, there are HVAC people that I maybe worked with. I work more with, like, a lot of mold remediation companies that bring in an HVAC professional that knows what they're doing, like a lot of building scientists and things like that, where I'll come in and then we work together that way. But it's usually when it gets to the point where it's a massive problem, and that's when I work with the good HVAC professionals that get brought in. So
awesome. So that sounds to me, just to wrap that, or sorry, Jeremy.
No, you go ahead.
That it sounds like maybe it could serve everybody well if maybe HVAC contractors assumed less. And I'm guilty of the same thing.
Yeah.
You think that this person has a tight budget, they don't want to do a certain thing. Don't assume that someone's not willing to air seal or insulate, especially if it's going to help comfort, if it's going to help the system perform better. It's going to help the contractor have less problems as well, less callbacks, less comfort complaints.
Yep. Man, that's such a great point. I fight against that all the time in the new construction world too, with the contractors that work in the energy programs. And, like, as we talked about in an earlier webinar, like, a lot of the green building programs have their buy-in minimums, and then they have the stuff you can do for points. And these guys get stuck in the mindset that these guys only want the minimum. Like, they don't ever offer the upgraded thing, even at the peril of the customer. They'd rather get the sale than worry about offering something that's actually going to solve a problem that the guys may end up having down the road. And it's just the swim that we call it for years, the swim to the bottom. Like, guys, start opening up your mind, and saying, hey, here's a full menu of stuff that we can do for you. You'd be surprised how much your sales can increase by doing that. And I did want to address one comment. I saw a comment on here, if you can put it up, Ben, that says, give it all away for free, ? Leave behind the information for the next guy. I feel like the stuff that I was talking about, if you do that, they're only ever going to call you again. You're going to give them information that's so valuable to them that there is a very small chance that you get price shopped once you open up your knowledge base to them and you own the customer. I got Joe Madash in the comments saying, blah, blah. Why should they take on new employees, new skill trades, new company add-ons? If it was so easy, wouldn't we all be doing it? They make lots of money. And I think I understand what you're saying there, Joe, and I agree with you that they are going to make enough money to be able to offer or to make these suggestions while they're doing the sale. Like, it's not something that's going to cost them more to be able to do, or it's going to cost them out of doing business, I guess I should say, that they're going to be able to do. I see, Dave, you want to add?
I would love to address
Okay.
Joe's comment and then kind of what you were just talking about.
Okay.
I would say no. Like, my recommendation, to go back to it, was connect with Jessica, connect with other experts, have partnerships with people that are not your employees, that you have no risk in. All you're doing is referring them, and even have a financial relationship with them where, like I said, if they close business, you get a piece of it. And that way you're getting in front of each other's clients. And I think it also reduces your callbacks and your maintenance issues and things that you're running into. I think this is a financial gain. And I would say, don't do it for free. You know, what we do as a consulting firm to weed out the tire kickers, we have like an upfront fee for like an initial feasibility study. If someone is seeking LEED certification, Energy Star, NGBS, any one of these green programs, and wanting to maybe comply with 45L for the tax credit, we'll have a fee for that. And that way we get paid for the work that we do. And if they want to take that information to someone else, they can, but they didn't get any free work out of us. So I would say maybe find a way, if you're doing a load calculation, like Jeremy says, or some initial sales call or some other evaluation, some form of an energy audit, as people love to call them, have a fee for that. Don't do it for free, and maybe you get paid for that and you get to sell an equipment upgrade or a retrofit or whatever it is. Charge for the work that you do. Do not do it for free.
So let's talk about that. Not do it for free. What does that actually mean? Are you saying in homes, as an in-home sales tactic, what should they be doing in your mind? What should their in-home
I'm saying it depends on how something gets generated, right? Let's say you get a call, someone says, hey, I think I need a new furnace or whatever. And maybe they do. Maybe it truly is a broken piece of equipment. It needs to be replaced. That's a different story. But if you have someone who's looking to do some form of an upgrade in a home or some other building, you can have services set up. You say, oh, okay, I hear what you're saying. Here's what I offer. I offer doing this evaluation to see what you really need, what best suits you for this price. If you want to add this thing, we do that for this price. And then you do weed out tire kickers, and you weed out the people that aren't going to be loyal to you, that would take your free work and take it to someone else. I think that's a good business strategy.
So let's not talk about the replace. I'm going to have to throw one more curveball at you here. Let's not talk about the replacement thing. Let's talk about somebody called and they said, I have a room up here that isn't working right, and I need you to do something about it. What do you think is the typical thing that's going to happen in that situation, and what do you think should be happening in that situation from an HVAC contracting perspective?
So I think the typical thing is, and I'm not just going to put it on HVAC contractors, I'm going to say whoever it is, whoever you call, what a surprise, whatever they sell is going to be the thing that you need. It's not just going to be the HVAC guys, but HVAC contractors would typically get this call. So they're probably going to look at that as a sales call. I would say you need to have an evaluation built in that you can charge for, and you can tell them, hey, I charge for this. And you can do a full robust evaluation and get paid for that. And then whatever the building really needs becomes the recommendation. And then you have a way that you financially benefit from that as well, whether it is doing an HVAC upgrade Or who knows, maybe it's not swapping out the box. Maybe it's some duct sealing, or maybe it is, playing around with airflow, something like that. Maybe there's whatever the solution is, you have that solution, and you're selling solutions. You're a problem solver. You're not an equipment adjuster or just a box swapper. You're a problem solver. And that way, and sometimes you get less out of it. Like, you might go and you say, oh, wow, what a surprise. This one room that's uncomfortable to have no baffles in the attic. So we got this wind washing, and this whole bedroom has no insulation on top of it because the wind has blown it all to the side. So I'm going to call Jessica. She's going to come in, have an easy solution. I'm going to get a little kickback. The homeowner's going to love me. They thought they were going to spend 12 grand on an upgrade. They ended up spending whatever, $2,500 for Jessica to come in and do a quick little easy solution. And they feel great about it, and then you're going to have a loyal customer that's going to refer you to others. And again, you're selling solutions, and you have a lot less invested in that solution anyway. I think that's the key, is become problem solvers, not whatever you are now.
I can tell you this anecdotally, because I have HVAC in the names of both of my companies. We get calls all the time from people that are looking for what you just said, a solution. And most of them have had multiple contractors come in there and sell multiple different BS solutions to their problem that just benefited their pocketbooks at the time and did not even really solve the problem. And they're willing to pay money, good money, like thousands of dollars. We're not cheap. We're consultants. So I have the conversation. I'm like, here's our background. Here's what we know. Here's what we've seen. Here's what we can offer you. We're going to come in and find a real problem, but it's not cheap. We start for it's just a blower door. And although I'm not worried about sharing price numbers, like for a blower door and an infrared scan, $500 walk in the door. But I tell them right away, that's probably not going to diagnose the problem. That just gets us started. Once I get into the attic, there's going to be other things that we need to take a look at when I get into looking at the HVAC system, and that stuff is going to cost more. And here's what those add-ons will cost. And a lot of times people will be like, how much is it going to cost for you just to evaluate everything and tell me what the dang solution is? Like, that's what they're looking for a lot of times, and they're willing to pay for it. But guys get so hung up on making the immediate sell that they don't look at the bigger picture and how they could actually win that customer for life and also create a revenue stream that's not there right now.
Well, that's a really good point, Jeremy, and not flipping over too far, but primarily or a large percentage of what I deal with is builders, right? And so even the builders are saying, hey, because the homeowners are beginning to demand it. Okay, things have changed. IAQ is important. Comfort is important. Energy is not going anywhere. And, there's always been a lot of, why go ahead and do the extra step? Okay. And I think the thing that's important to remember is, as these builders in new construction, okay, they're getting calls from people who are having issues 2 years after they buy the house. And Jeremy, how many audits did we go to in 3 or 4 or 5 years old houses that were all the same in the same neighborhood, built by the same builder, right? Yep. And we were doing the same measures over, and it was almost like a pattern. You could see it. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is, I see a lot of people say, why make a change in what I'm doing? We're making money. We get that. And I understand that. And if you're focused on just being a HVAC company that does a heat pump or a swap on a system, that's great. But the tie of the relationships is parallel between retrofit market and the new construction market. There's builders out there that want to know, hey, who's going to take responsibility for the air sealing? Okay. And if that's an insulator, how are they working with the HVAC company that I have to be able to provide information like the blower door number so that the system can be priced properly? We're not going to go stand across the street and hold up 3 fingers and say that's a 3-ton system on a new construction anymore. So I think as the times change, the knowledge level increases, and as homeowner demand becomes more prevalent on those issues, these are all things that are good to gravitate towards. But if you don't want to gravitate towards them, find people that you can work with that will bring you leads that you can pass leads on to.
That comment that was just up, thank you, Johnny. That absolutely agree with the partnering with people for leads. We've been saying that over and over again. And I think that every HVAC contractor should have a go-to home performance contractor that can jump in an attic and do what they need to do. Like that is should be a relationship that you have in your back pocket. This comment here, shell work is the comfort's foundation. Value is beyond payback. I'm going to stop right there because I hate the word payback. Like, I don't ever talk about payback in terms of any of this stuff at all. Like, it's the dumbest conversation to ever have. Like, I don't give two shits about payback. Like, we're not doing it for payback. I wish that conversation would have never got started. It was the biggest hindrance to us doing the work the right way. And during the ARA Fund days was people were so worried about throwing it in some software and calculating some dumb payback and telling you where to stop because it's not paying back anymore financially. And life just doesn't work like that. The payback in dollars is a bonus if they get payback on this stuff. Like, we're doing it to make the house healthier, the house safer, and the house more comfortable. And then we're worrying about payback, and then we're worried about decarbonization and all these other things. But until you get those 4 or 5 tenets of building correct, the rest of it doesn't even matter at all, in my opinion. Anyway, that's how I feel about it.
Yeah, I want to add something to that comment as well. That person, I didn't catch the person's name, but they said the shell is the foundation of comfort, and I think that's really important. And for those that aren't familiar with me, one of my other kind of unique perspectives is I was a very early adopter of passive building and passive house construction, and the massive difference between the way they look at the envelope versus really everyone else, but even going all the way to the extreme, what I described in the beginning with my farmhouse, you can see the difference. And, kind of going all the way back to talking about electrification and heat pump upgrades and all that. If you really want, nationwide adoption of heat pump swap outs and electrification, you need to focus on the envelope first. Fabric first is the way the passive house folks describe it. And that's because it makes the envelope so much more stable, and you lose heat so much slower that it makes the heat pump work properly, right? You don't have flawed envelopes like the building I live in, where it's just, you can literally feel the heat just being sucked right off of your body, going right out the envelope. I mean, it's craziness. So I just wanted to touch base on that. And yeah, payback, it's going to cost me well over 50 grand, probably closer to 100 grand to do all the upgrades, including HVAC replacement that I need to do on my place. That stuff's not ever going to come close to paying back. But you know what it's going to end up doing once it's all said and done? I'm never going to have a bunch of kerosene and space heaters laying around that could be fire hazards, be freezing huddled up, have condensation issues going on all over the place. That's not going to happen in my house anymore once those upgrades are done.
You just made me think
about payback at all.
Think about a good point. Like, what's the human value of an envelope upgrade versus a heat pump upgrade? Because that value is tremendously different. Jessica, do you have any, and I'm gonna put you on the spot for a minute here, any anecdotal stories of people who were like blown away by the way their house was operating after you got done doing what you're doing? Where they're just like, thank you so much, my love. Like, I've had people literally in tears telling me, and Johnny has too. So I'll let him tell the story if he remembers it, of these doctors. But go ahead, Jessica.
All the time. Please. Like, I have a great relationships with, like, I feel like all of my clients. I feel like we're like family almost, but I really do take the time to get to know and understand their goals and what their struggles are, because I want to be that person that solves a problem, right? It makes me feel good knowing that whatever they have going on in their home, I'm going to be honest with them about it. And I'm going to give them a roadmap and an explanation as to why certain things need to be done. And part of like what makes me tick, like, people are living in their house and they're sick, like whether it's because of an oversized air conditioning unit and now they have mold outbreaks, or they bought a home and there's like urine and feces and dead bodies that are literally above their head, not knowing that the air is communicating and they're breathing that in. And like, I feel like I tell people, like, what do you do for a living? I'm like, I'm an essential worker. I'm a superhero. I save lives. I save the planet. I save money. Like, literally, we do all of that, right? So I know, like, if anybody were to read my Google reviews, like, they're heartfelt. I have people like, you cut my electric bill in half. You save me $300 a month. Like, I change people's lives. That's all I'm going to say. So it is a good feeling. And it's just, I wish I could help more people, more homeowners. And, I don't want to blame HVAC professionals, right? Because I feel that if people knew better, that they would do better. And they're getting called in, and maybe they're not understanding the whole situation. Maybe they're not understanding what's truly going on in the home. And part of it could have to do with the fact that the homeowner doesn't know. Like, they just know that, they hear like, oh, I need to add insulation, or, oh, my AC unit's old, I need to add it. Or they think a bigger unit's going to solve problems. And it's just, if people really knew better, I really feel that they would do better. And, part of what the issue with the homeowner is, especially ones that come in and they just buy a new house, right? They're like, all right, well, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that and do this and do that. But they're doing the right things, but it's just not in the right order. And a lot of times it could create other issues. And then the other part of it is like, so we reduce air leakage by a lot. Like, I've done blower door tests before and after with certain customers to show them, like, they're like, why are we going to pay thousands of dollars to you? I'm like, I'm going to prove to you that what we do works, right? And basically, like, hold on, I just completely lost my train of thought. I get so excited. But yeah, I'm going to stop.
No, and Jeremy, remind me what story you were mentioning there. We had a couple with the
Let me say one thing here. Walter Jeff Grimm, connect with Johnny Lang after offline. He can help you. He can get you the information about training for attic air seal. It's in his forte. It's part of what he does. So if you would like to find out about that training, he can definitely connect with you. Really quickly, I think we need to move on to another subject, but the story that I was talking about was the doctors who had the kids with allergies, and they were getting allergy shots every day, every week. And they moved into a house and they could not tell. They're like, we're doctors and we cannot figure out how to solve these kids' allergies. And we saw a special on PBS. And exactly. And they said, we should call a company that does these energy audits. And then we were working for National Heating and Air at the time, and we did AeroSeal, and they called us, and we went in and we did a whole evaluation of their house. And we found out that exactly what, the ductwork was super leaky. The attic was communicating all over the place, like all this different stuff. And we went in and we did the AeroSeal, and we did the attic AeroSeal, and we put on some HEPA filtration onto the furnaces and stuff like that. And the lady literally called the office, and they put her on speakerphone, and she was crying on the phone saying how her kids have not been to the doctor in over 2 months, and she cannot believe the difference that they made. And they had been fighting, and they were just so grateful that they found a company that could actually really solve their problem. And it was a real health issue that was causing her kids. They have ongoing allergies that they were getting sticked every 2 weeks, going and getting shots for, sitting in the doctor screaming and crying when all they had to do was fix their house. So I just feel like those are the type of stories that you're not going to get out of just installing a heat pump into a home and decarbonizing or doing all this other stuff. None of it gives you that value that you get from what you do to the envelope there. All right, we are running close to short on time. I think we're probably 15 minutes away, if not closer. I do want to talk about some of this policy stuff really quickly and get into some specific, 15 to 20 minutes left is what Ben's telling me we have. Okay, so what I did is I formulated some questions for these guys based on their specific industry experience. So I'm going to go around and put them on the spot if they don't mind, and just talk about some of these different questions. I'm going to start with Johnny because he's the first in my list here. And let's see here. I want to see one that we have not talked about. Here we go. In your role, you have a significant impact on educating professionals. What key messages or pieces of advice would you give to policymakers, HVAC contractors, and other stakeholders about the importance of considering the building envelope and heat pump installations? Like, I feel like we belabored that a little bit, but if you could give us just one line or 2 lines about what your advice is to the people that create the policies and other stakeholders from an industry perspective, as far as like, you're a Knauf installation, you're a BPI trainer, like from that sort of perspective.
Well, Jeremy, I mean, just to keep it the short and simple answer, and there was a question on there about how to get the blower door test taken care of in the IRA. It all starts with your knowledge, and whether you're an HVAC company, a builder, an insulating company, a consulting company. And I spent a couple years back. I was in Washington, and I spoke with the legislators before the IRA was passed. And I said, it's one of those things. The blower door is really understanding how many air changes occur in a home is really the foundation for everything we do. Whether it's sizing of equipment, that's existing equipment, whether it's duct leakage, leakage to the outside that may be occurring. And then now transitioning into this conversation, and so that we don't repeat the same mistakes we made in the past in proper sizing of equipment, it has to do with heat pumps. And then there's another part that we didn't mention was solar. A lot of people are making the transition in electrification into solar. They're putting on these huge solar systems and arrays with this very high ROI or SEER value, and they're not making any consideration. Hey, I could reduce my solar package by $10,000 if I did $3,500 worth of air sealing and insulating. So I dealt with the builder just 2 years ago, and I was happy he called me in. But it was a simple education. He was actually, he was having a problem with the bogus room, right? Above the bonus room, above the garage, just like everybody does. And what were they doing out there in the West? And I'm not going to say the builder of the state, but he was putting one system in just for that room. So then all of a sudden he's running two systems, doubling the utility usage, long-term cost of having to replace compressors and filters. He wasn't doing any air sealing or insulating on the home. There was no code in that state. So one of the things we try to talk about in one of my roles as being an advocate in the industry in Washington is understanding number one, the indoor air quality issue and how that relates to the quality of the home environment. Then having the system sized properly, and that all takes testing into account. Testing is the foundation layer of which everything needs to be built upon. Sorry, long-winded.
That's okay. I love it. I'm going to switch gears totally. Like we're just going to go on. Johnny, the gentleman Walter is looking. Try to get up. Will you get up with him? Shake your head. Yes, you'll get up with him afterwards.
Oh, I will.
Okay.
Hi, Walter.
Jessica says hi. Hey, so Dave, here's my question for you because we haven't touched on this yet, and we've had people in the chat talking about it. This is going to go back to one of your answers, but I'm going to let you answer it from this perspective. Electrification for low income households. Regarding the focus on low income households and new incentive programs, you've expressed skepticism about their effectiveness. Could you suggest ways, could you expand on that opinion for one thing? And could you suggest ways these programs might be redesigned to better serve these households and still encourage envelope upgrades?
So yeah, that's a loaded question. And I would say when you're talking about incentivizing building upgrades, and you're talking about affordable housing, low income housing, the problem you run into is in that income bracket, there's a lot more renting than there is home ownership. And those that do find a way to be homeowners, they're constantly faced with, this tug of war with resources. So incentivizing them to spend a bunch of their own money on some form of an upgrade, there's always going to be a competing resource. So I don't think that's going to be nearly as effective, and you're not going to touch nearly as many people as by incentivizing builders, developers, those folks that are actually controlling much more of that market and have much more of that building stock that isn't being upgraded. I think you need to incentivize them more, because a lot of these things you cannot double dip with some of these incentives. There are buildings that could go into what I would call a gut rehab, but there's no incentive to do it. So they're just leaving it as what we would call a moderate rehab, meaning they're not opening up the walls. They'll go in, they'll replace flooring, cabinets, appliances, all this different stuff, but they don't get inside the walls. They don't do any air sealing and insulating. They even replace the HVAC. But they don't do any envelope upgrades. So that creates a problem. So I would say incentivize building owners, and you're going to touch a lot more of the market. Unfortunately, that might leave low income homeowners out, but I think they struggle with other priorities anyway. And I don't think that's putting incentives in the right place. I think maybe there's other programs that can help. Go ahead. You had a follow-up question?
I got two follow-up questions. Well, one's sort of a statement and one's a question. The first follow-up, the question is this: do you feel like, because of based on everything you just said about them renting and all that, do you feel like a heat pump beats a blank? Like if they have an incentive for a heat pump and they can get a more efficient piece of equipment in there, is that better, or should they be looking at a bigger picture than that when they're creating these incentives and say, hey, we should really find a way to incentivize the envelope and not just worry about what beats a blank?
Well, I would say, like in the beginning, you talked about how a lot of these things are custom, right? And I would say the answer is it depends. So sometimes a heat pump is going to be the right upgrade. You know, sometimes if you have a piece of equipment at the end of its useful life and it's not very efficient, sure, a heat pump does beat a blank. You know, there's nothing wrong with making one individual item in a building better than it was before. The problem is there's all this, you know, hashtag electrification, hashtag heat pump, this and that, all this, you know, internet warrior activism about electrification. They don't realize you got people that think it's the right thing to take out a brand new 98% gas furnace and put in some, you know, pedestrian efficiency heat pump. And they end up spending way more. And depending on where that's the other thing, depending on where the power's coming from, it could be worse for the environment. It could be a net negative on the environment, depending on where the power's produced with all the transmission losses in the line and everything else. So just putting in heat pumps is not always the right decision, no matter what your goal is. Even if it is strictly, if you're talking about environmentalism, like Johnny was talking about with solar, I think the problem is people hear electrification and what they think they're hearing is renewable energy, and it's not. There's still a whole lot of problems with how, if you're an environmentalist, there's a whole lot of problems with how energy is produced. And if the energy is being produced in a way that has a negative environmental impact, it doesn't matter if you got an electric system in there versus natural gas. In many cases, a natural gas system for now is going to be more, it's going to be cheaper to run, and it's even going to have less of an environmental impact. And I know that's going to be blasphemy to some people that, you know, love putting, you know, hashtag whatever the slogan is, that, you know, that's a campaign slogan. But yeah, so that's a really long-winded way of saying it depends.
And so thank you for that. I got one other, this is just an anecdotal thing that you're going to remember that's hilarious. And you were talking about the fact that there is no incentives for people, for building owners, people that rent, like no incentive for them to. And if you remember way back in the beginning of our career when you worked for Tony and you were doing all that stuff and the ARA funds were just getting talked about, they weren't even a thing yet. And you were like, dude, there's no way they're not offering this to these people they're doing these rehabs and renting these houses out. All these people need it. You're like, I just can't believe it. I won't accept it. I can't believe it. And then boom, the ARA funds came out. Not one single dollar was allocated to people that had rental properties or anything like that. You had to be a homeowner to even access those funds. And I think that is a little bit of a pattern that's being repeated. And it's a huge miss in everything that's going on for this whole sector of people that control the lives of hundreds and thousands of people that live in America, and you cannot do anything about it because even probably Jessica's ran into this too. Like, oh, I don't own the building. What can I do if I do presentations even for college kids in community college, and they're always like, hey, my family rents. Is there anything that we can do as renters? And sure, there's little stuff you can tell them, but the major things that need to be done, they cannot do without the building owner taking action on it. And there's literally nothing that incentivizes that stuff.
Well, I was just at the Ohio Housing Conference, which is basically the affordable housing conference in Columbus last week. And there was a presentation, and this guy, I completely disagreed with, and he kind of got laughed at. He was suggesting that because some of these incentives that are out there now, homeowners can't, or not homeowners, but tenants might be able to take advantage of it depending on how the IRS looks at, 25C and some of these other tax credits. And the developers in the room were laughing. They're like, do you think I'm going to let a tenant replace a window or do some kind of retrofit on my building? Are you crazy? No. So it would be a non-starter anyway. And so you need to incentivize the people that are controlling these projects. They're already getting millions of dollars in tax credits in many cases through the low-income housing tax credit program. Some states like Ohio just implemented also a state level. So you have the federal low-income housing tax credit as well as a state level low-income housing tax credit. And if you incentivize envelope upgrades, you would turn a lot of these moderate rehabs into gut rehabs that are doing all of these things. And you would have a lot more people affected in a positive way.
We're having some dissension of opinion here. Mr. West, who's a good friend of mine, is saying that I'm wrong and they did, what is it? Jeremy, you are wrong. We work directly with building owners and highly incentivized home performance. I think not heat pumps. I'm supposed to say home performance upgrades. Mr. West, that was not David's and I experience. We tried everything we could to get those incentive dollars during the ARA days applied to building owners, and in our local market, it was really hard to do.
I would say there are a lot of utility programs that offer incentives like that. But again, it depends on the utility. And those are kind of few and far between. And there's a limited budget. Once that money's gone, it's gone. And there's a lot of administrative costs that goes along with it. And for the record, what I would say is I think the best form of incentive is to just not tax people. I believe taxation is theft. And if we let everybody keep their own money, all of these problems will be solved. I really believe that. So that is my formal personal stance on all of these things. I think that all of us adults can handle things on our own. We don't need the government to facilitate funds. But anyway, forgive my digression.
I'm going to get to Jessica for her specific question here, and then we'll circle back around to this really quick. This is a sort of off the beaten path, but it's cool that we have some women representation here. So I'm going to ask this question anyway. You advocate for women's empowerment and women in construction. How do you think increasing the involvement of women in these fields is changing the dynamic and approach to building performance and energy efficiency, particularly in the context of heat pumps and building envelopes?
So, I mean, aren't women meant to stay home and vacuum? So why not vacuum out attic insulation, right? So I make jokes about it. But yeah, so women have more of like a nurturing gene, I guess you could say, where I feel like we genuinely care. And despite what the job is, like we get it done. Like I'm literally vacuuming out shit and dead bodies, you know? And, you know, as a woman, you take care of a child, right? Whatever needs to get done, it gets done, right? And then there's that whole other part of it where it's like, you know, we have that heart where it's like, we're nurturing, we've got to do it for the customers, right? So that's how I feel as a woman. But also there's the other part of it where it's like, I could be, you know, I could get into places that a lot of men can't get into, you know? So my size to my advantage, I'm able to, I feel like, do a better job. And there's a lot of grants and there's funding for women to start businesses up. Fortunately, like I didn't need to do that. And I didn't even, you know, being a business owner, it's so hard to like, oh, I got to fill out this application and apply here and there. But it's just like, you know, it's not a glamorous job, but it is such a need. And, you know, it's not for the faint-hearted. So there are a lot of strong women out there that if they maybe knew what it entailed, and it's like you're getting paid to exercise to save families and the planet. That's what we do. So girl power. I feel like consumers trust women more, believe it or not. So we're kind of at, you know, maybe a little leg above, but people are going to be more trusting. What I've experienced, like as a woman, when I first got into the industry, my background, I came from corporate America for 16 years. I was like vice president in the lending industry and doing residential mortgages and banking and whatnot. And I had a whole life transformation. I quit my career and ended up being recruited by an installation contractor out in Tampa who was a businessman, not a building science man. And I worked for him for a year and basically was told to watch YouTube to learn and whatever. So I found out about a training being held by IDI, and I actually got fired for going to the training, and that training changed my life. And it opened up the door for me. 4 months after that happened, Attic Queen officially became a business, and I became obsessed with learning. And again, you know, there's people that show up to their job every day and they literally hate it. And they're like, I cannot wait until it's 5 o'clock, and they're just watching the clock. And it's like, you know, this is, some people haven't really found their purpose in life. And I genuinely found my purpose, and it turned it into my passion. And, you know, unfortunately, I broke my back last November, so I can't do the work anymore, but I'm still operating my business. And, you know, this is like, what's next for me is I am going to be able to tell my story more, and I want to show women what I did. And it does feel empowering that, like, I can do a man's job and I do a good job at it. And I want women to be able to get paid to vacuum, right? And not your typical homemaker, I guess, but there's a lot of money in it. All of my customers, like, I don't ever deal with like the grants and stuff. And unfortunately, Florida, DeSantis didn't want to take any of the IRA funds, which was horrible because I was actually asked to advocate and help get it approved. And when it was approved, I was like, yes. And then I found out DeSantis didn't want to take any of that. So my client is the client that has money or gets the money and does it. So I want to be able to empower women that maybe they've stayed home with their kids all of their life, and now they're like, what am I going to do? Like, how am I going to make money? Like, the cost of living is going up. It's not getting any easier, but I really can show, whether it's women or anybody, how to do what we do. And it really is a need. And with, you know, as our generation, as we get older, a lot of people are retiring out of construction, and the people that we're looking at to like take the spots, like it's not there. So I really want 2024, being that I can't be an addict, is going to be my huge push to help the country basically get more involved in doing the right thing, and maybe somehow create relationships and alliances essentially with these contractors that can provide a homeowner a roadmap and getting the work done the right way. So they're doing it once, and these people aren't paying thousands of dollars over and over and over to not get results. That's my story. I'm going to stick to it.
Love it. I will say that all three of us. Yeah, go ahead.
So I just want to say, I think something that would help more women get into construction. I think there are tons of women who are studs in the construction industry already. Yeah. People underestimate how many people there really are. But I would say, just like there are misconceptions with people think women can't do this or can't do that, I think there's a lot of misconceptions there. There are just as many misconceptions about how welcoming those in the construction industry can be. I think there's people that don't know any better, think that there's just a bunch of like, you know, gruffy old men who are doing cat calls and stuff like that. And really, that's not what it is. I mean, these are people who are your brothers and uncles and cousins and fathers and grandfathers. And just like they want to see their son or their grandson succeed, they want to see their daughter or granddaughter succeed as well. And people would invest just as much of their own time in the development of a young woman getting into the construction industry as a young man. So I would say, don't be open-minded, whoever you are. That's what I would say.
I just want to say that I want to give a shout out to the women that we've all three worked with in this industry, especially Julie Tolliver and Amanda Tolliver, and even Karen Barris, who I know is on this webinar watching as well. Like, we have worked with some women that get out there and get it in this industry. And Julie reminds me, or Jessica reminds me so much of Julie, like her story coming out of the corporate world and being able to fit into small places and the attention to detail. Like, I mean, they get to it, man. So like, there's no reason not to work side by side with them. So I appreciate your perspective. I wasn't able to have Julie on today, and I was super glad that I was able to see your post coming across and reach out to you and get you in here to
I appreciate it.
Fill the spot. So I appreciate that. I think we're about at our time, Ben. Oh yeah, we've got 3 audience questions worth answering. So far we can do 1 to 2 pre-selected questions. Ben, throw them up there. You select them and we'll knock them down, man. So go ahead. And are you with us? So how can we take these practices to difficult to access manufactured and old homes that need improvements badly, but may not have the resources to afford the work, ability, or use the tax credits? One thing, and I seen somebody in the feed say it already, like the low income weatherization, if that is what it is. Now, if it's market rate and they don't qualify for low income, it can be challenging. to get them help because they fall into a weird space when it comes to the incentives that are available. But like a lot of manufactured and old homes, the people that live in them, not so much old homes is a different bucket really, but manufactured homes for sure fall into low income weatherization. And a lot of people don't know that those funds exist because they're not being marketed like they were. Like even my mom is on a fixed income since my dad died. She's widowed, and she lives in North Carolina, and she had no idea that the incentives, the weatherization incentives were there. And I called around and I found them for her, and we got her whole house weatherized, and they helped her put actually a heat pump on the outside of the house and things like that. So like there are funds available to that bracket of income that do a great job at the weatherization. Like I cannot say enough good things about the guys in the low income weatherization field and what they know about the manufactured homes. I didn't know. I took a low-income contract when I owned Cincinnati Energy Solutions. And like Dave was saying, we did it, and Johnny too, on trailer homes all down throughout the bowels of Kentucky, like on the side of the hill, like just a whole humble pie, different way of living down that way. And we found, I didn't know the first thing about working on a trailer. It's not something you really get taught until you get into it. So it is a very specific thing, and there are very specific metrics that are not the same for homes that it is for trailers. It's the same concepts, but what you're implementing is totally different. It's a different way of implementing the same concepts than it is on a brick and mortar home. So long-winded answer to that question, but I think that low income weatherization is the place to start for that stuff. Do you have a follow-up, Dave? Or okay.
I was just gonna say, yeah, you're right on point. Like I wasn't even, when we were talking about all these incentives, I was not considering programs like that pay 100% for it, that there's no cost to the occupant or anything. I was thinking of other things that was trying to leverage homeowners' own investment.
Okay. Yeah. Next question, Ben. Please elaborate on how to connect customers with a blower door test with the IRA for funds if they can't afford it up front. Do they hire first or claim it on their taxes? Johnny, you brought that up. Let's hear about
it. Am I allowed to throw out names of can I just say what I'm going to say?
Do it.
What I'm going to say? All right. So yeah, I mean, listen here, I'm a BPI guy, Building Performance Institute. And for me, that is a really, really good place to start. There is a homeowner's website as well as a professional website that you can go to. One is directed towards the homeowners, and they have kind of the resources to lead you into getting that done. They also have what is called a BPI Gold Star contractor. Those all of the contractors in BPI are great. And so, you know, they use the blower door as the foundation. And then it's the Desire site, DSIRE, that you can pull up with a list of the state incentives that are available. You just put in your zip code and it'll pull that up, whether it's through a utility. You know, there's groups out there, and I'm not just saying this because they're on, but CETA, which is the Cook County Economic Development Association, if I believe I had that right, up in Cook County, up in Chicago. I mean, the work that they've done over the last 10 years, they've done, you know, and Jay's on here, but it's been well over 10,000 houses, and almost all of that revolved around the blower door. So, well, you know, and then on the flip side of that, in the new construction market, you're wanting to look for those green programs that Dave mentioned and is really a specialist in. You want to look at homes that have a HERS rating, HERS certification. You want to look at builders that are working towards Energy Star. But DOE.gov is a really good place to start for your education on the journey. But you can find everything you need on the Building Performance Institute website.
Is there something specific that you know about the IRA though and blower doors?
So yeah,
that's what they're asking a little bit.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, it's $150 for a blower door test. So that's really what it came down to, and that's what we pushed on through in Washington a few years ago when we were back. And so now, you know, that's another thing I didn't mention, and to expand on that, you know, incorporating that as an HVAC company, you do 10 blower doors in a week. Just to get the baseline information, that's going to be free to the homeowner and a tax incentive. So you're making $150 per blower door test. You know, if I wasn't with such a great company with a message and what we do, trust me, I would be doing nothing but blower door testing all day long, every day. How many times can I blower door test in a day? I get 150 bucks. So that's kind of the flip side of it about a business making money, but also now the homeowners don't have to pull that out of their pocket to get the valued information that comes with the blower door test.
So is that something that whoever's doing the test would turn in for a rebate, or is that a tax thing?
It's a tax thing, and it's part of the, you know, the work scope per year. It has a max cap, I believe, $2,500 or $2,700 per year that goes along with that of what you can do. So if you want to stage out, if you have $8,000 worth of work that needs to be done, you know, you can actually break that down and break it in. This doesn't stop now. This is different than the ARA funds. We have 10 years of this. This money was the copious amount of money that went into this. They want to build the industry, and they understand that these green collar jobs are growing, and they want to train. They want to make sure that in multifamily buildings, air sealing and insulating in new construction is highly incentivized. Anybody who has anything to do with multifamily buildings should be air sealing and insulating properly because of the amount of money they get per building. So, you know, the federal government stepped up. We're moving in that direction, whether or not we want to. And I'm still with Dave on the whole tax thing and everything like that. I understand. But this money's has been put out there, and $150 a blower door test, that's just the incentive. I'm not saying that's what should be charged, but for a baseline blower door test that is a 10 or 15 minute test, yeah, 150 bucks is a fair price, I think.
And say, I mean, we charge $300 to walk in the door and do one code wise. So like, you know, 150 bucks pays for half of that. So yeah, I'll take it all day long if somebody's gonna get it for free. Dave, go ahead. I know you're.
I just want to add, because they did specifically ask about tax, and something that I've learned. You know, I've been in the building performance industry for 15 or so years, right? We've been doing all this stuff, and some of the things I've taken for granted has been like, you know, the renewable energy tax credit has been around for a really long time. So we've had all these, you know, solar experts doing consulting on your renewable tax credit. We've had the same thing with the builder tax credit with 45L and all this stuff. What I've found since I've been with Scarpello Consulting and had the assistance of these guys who really are tax experts is that there is a lot of things that are assumed in the industry that are wrong, that are incorrect based on tax law. And so what I would say is get with a tax expert with anything related to taxes. I no longer, as an energy guy, specifically give advice on any of these things, because there's tons of stuff on LinkedIn and everywhere else that is just flat out wrong, especially related to 45L, but also the renewable energy tax credit, all these things. Just be very, very careful. And the only reason I bring that up is because of they specifically asked about tax, right? Yep. So just beware of the sources you get information from.
No, I agree. I always say I'm not a tax accountant. This is not tax advice. Here's what I think I know, and then I let them go fit. But talk to your tax accountant, because like you don't know how it's going to fit their typical situation. People are in all, like you said, different brackets of income and all. Right.
Even utilization. Stuff. That's a great point. Utilization of the tax credit. Yeah. If you don't have certain tax credits, if you don't have enough. See, I'm not even going to pretend to be. I would have my counterpart on here saying.
I'll tell you this. Based on like for geothermal, which is under the solar income or the renewable energy tax credit, I've had building owner guys that own big business, like big, huge, multi-million-dollar businesses, and they're doing their own personal house. And I'll be like, "There's this tax credit available. Talk to your tax credit." Oh, I used all my everything for the whole year. I don't care about that at all. It doesn't mean anything. The HVAC contractors that are working with me, they get blown away. Like, can't believe he's saying that, but like there are some people that shit doesn't matter to them, like they've already, like you say, used it all up in their tax. So you have to be careful about what you're saying as a definite thing when it comes to anything that comes off the taxes and stuff.
Right. And then a lot of times what happens is, especially dealing with homeowners, you don't end up dealing with, or you don't end up being able to even manipulate the situation in your favor until it's too late, because you're not dealing with your prior year taxes until that year's over. So you couldn't have even done other things to create better utilization for the tax credit. So again, just be very careful. Don't listen to me as a building science guy about tax credit stuff. Listen to listen to a tax expert. And I have a counterpart that's a tax expert, but my job is the energy stuff. So don't listen to anything I have to say about taxes. Talk to your tax guy or another tax guy.
Jessica, we either lost her or she had to go. We are coming to the end of our time. Ben's asking us to wrap this up, and we have maybe 5 minutes left, and he wants to know if anybody else has any final comments on the actual webinar topic, since we digressed a little bit.
Dave?
So one thing I would just like to say is, while I did say that, you know, hashtags are not solutions, I will say that one of the questions we were going to throw out there had to do with, you know, what kind of standards or things could you go by that would be good things. I would say one of the passive house mantras is fabric first. That's something that's good to go by. And also one of BPI's things is build tight, ventilate right. That's sort of one of those hashtags that is, you know, true. It stands the test of time. It's good. But like the whole other things don't all, you know, aren't one size fits all solutions are not great, but those one size fit all things I think do apply to all buildings.
All right. Jessica, you have any parting thoughts?
I just cut out like for the last 2 minutes somehow, and I'm just back. So I just missed 2 minutes.
Yeah, it's you didn't miss it. We were just wrapping up the tax conversation, and now we're saying any panelist that wants to say any parting thoughts. It's our last 5 minutes of the webinar. So if you have anything that you want to add that hasn't been added that is relevant to the topic of the webinar, now's the time to say it.
So a lot of people that maybe this is foreign to them, a really good book is from Nate Adams, The Energy Whisperer, the Home Comfort book, which really helps people explain the steps things need to be done in. Also, if you are a professional working in attics, please reach out to me. I would literally love nothing more than if I could tell you how to get access to the equipment very affordably and how to do the work. Like, I really care about, not looking to make money off of it. I just want, if you're in this industry doing the work, let me help you. If I could figure it out, you can figure it out. And it's all about doing the right thing for the customer. And that's how I view it. And again, a lot of what the work we do really does impact people's health, their finances. If people are waking up sick, they can't be the best version of themselves. They're not going to, they just can't do it. So anything I can do to help, if you have any questions, I would love to help. But I really, really appreciate you guys all letting me join this. This is, I think,
we loved having you. You've been a great asset to the conversation. Johnny, you have anything you want to say, wrapping it up?
You know, I guess I always come out of these things really energized because, and thank you to all of you for everything you've done for me professionally over the years. But it's so great to see that there are, you know, whether it's organizations that are like CETA or BPI or training groups or HPIP, whatever it is, it's so good to finally kind of get to see all those people. We're still pushing in the same direction, right? And we're trying to be better today than we were yesterday. Okay, and that's really the thing that I think. And none of this is, you know, there's not going to be a cure-all. And this is never going to get completely solved, but continuing the conversation, continuing the education process. You know, I can't remember the last time I actually showed somebody how to install insulation. It's been a while. Most of what I do for the last 5 years is training on blower door testing, and I work for an insulation manufacturer. So we value it because it just is a trickle down effect, and we're all spending more times in our homes. Indoor air quality is really what this all comes down to with occupant safety and health. Jeremy, you put a couple things out there about people here locally who passed away from carbon monoxide poisoning recently. You know, these are all things that fall under this building science, a world that we live in. And going back to the story about the doctors with the daughter with allergies, you know, that was a turning point for me. Before that happened, I was like just trying to get my career under my legs. After I changed somebody's life, after you and I helped to change somebody's life, and to get that phone call and hear the woman crying and the thanks in her voice, when those things start happening, you start making an emotional connection to what you do. So I just urge everybody out there, you know, hurdles are just things that are meant to be jumped over. Okay, so however you go about doing it doesn't make a difference, but keep jumping and keep pushing. And whether it's through continued training, whether it's through just trying to be a better at what you do every day, just keep pushing down that path, and we'll end up in the right place.
I agree. And he's asking me to wrap this up, so I'm going to say one final thing. I just want to say I'm not against heat pumps. I'm not against HVAC at all, but I do beat on it because I feel like if the heat pumps are the only thing that we keep talking about, then it's going to be the only thing people think about, and the building envelope stuff's going to fall to the side. And that remains the most important piece of work that we do is tightening up the envelope. Yes, we need to put heat in people's houses, and people need heat and even cooling nowadays to live, but that should be done with the envelope already making the difference that it should. And the HVAC industry has the ear of the homeowner, and that is why they are the most important entry piece that needs to be talking about this stuff more, because they get the calls for this stuff way, 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 way more than anybody else does. People like Jessica have to go out and look for leads, where the HVAC companies got them coming in and day out, and they can really be the difference makers if they figure out how to make this viable for their business and able to offer it along with it. And we all know that the HVAC system is never going to work right if the envelope's not right, because there's too many variables going on that aren't controlled, and controlling the envelope means everything. All right, with that, we're going to sign off, guys, and in this, and we'll see you guys on the next one. Thank you all very much for coming on.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks for having us. Good seeing you guys. Have a Merry Christmas.